Bongani, very good evening to you. Thank you for being on Nightline. I want us to begin with why a shutdown is necessary at this point.
Because the negotiations we've been having with the department since last year, preparing for this registration, have collapsed. We have negotiated and we have agreed on things with the department. And then when the department goes and make the final decisions on their own, they change everything. I can cite one when we agreed with the department last year that we'll continue giving students that are not in accredited residences money so they can pay for rent. And then come this year, January, the department has took a 180-degree turn. And they're saying they will not give those students money, knowing that accommodation in South Africa is in a deficit.
But the department's position in response to some of the demands that have been made by students over the years has been that the reality is that financially they too have limits. What are you willing to compromise on from your list of demands? Because I want to go through some of them. Historic debt is one thing you want cleared. Walk-in applications, the no walk-in applications rule is something you're dissatisfied with. You're also saying that students who can't afford postgraduate studies should also be seen to, and that those whose results are being withheld should also have a plan made for them. It's quite a list. What are you willing to negotiate on?
The interesting thing about that list, or what you have mentioned from the list, is that some of the things are non-monetary items. For instance, walk-in applications. Some institutions are doing it. They are not on CAGE. So it's just to say those that are using CAGE, which is a discriminatory tool, because it takes the student with the highest APS, and mostly that student is from a well-off background, to say how do you then, where is the redress in the system? So it's not like it's a new thing that we're asking for to require resources and restructuring policies. No, it's just to say, let's do it. And then when you talk about postgraduate funding, the South African government says wants to produce, I think, about 5,000 PhDs year on year, starting from 2030, and mostly should be black South Africans, black South African females, but they're not pumping in the resources. We have NRF. The NRF is not doing enough. We have Services SETA. Services SETA is not doing enough. So there are already structures by the department to address that, but they're not properly coordinated, because the department always throws money at the problem, but do not provide oversight. That's why you have your university development grant, your NGAP. Those are systems that are put in place to ensure that they address it, but they're not properly regulated by the department. And the department does not want to go to university to ensure that these things are used adequately. That's why universities would take that money and use it for something else. And then I was trying to just go line by line.
It's fine, because it's quite a bit. And I want to go through, I don't know if you've seen this, a statement, and I've got it here on my phone, that was posted on an account that is purportedly that of the Basic Education Minister, that gave an indication that there had been some movement in your direction. Have you seen it? Titled the 2020 Memorandum of Students' Demands. It was dated 26th January. In fact, dated 16th January 2020. Not basic education, I mean higher education, where they were saying that one of the things that they are looking at, for example, was that all students with historic debt must be allowed to register in all universities, and we demand the higher education eradicate all historic debt demands. So this is a discussion that was going back, for example, on the 16th of December, the department was already issuing this statement indicating that it was taking your calls quite seriously. Why is it that 10 days later you think they've still not moved to your side completely?
So basically what happens is that when you have, let's say you are on NSFAS this year, but you have outstanding debt, all universities, or mainly most of the universities, would still allow you to register because you have money for this academic year. So you then negotiate with the university, sign a declaration of debt form and so forth and so on, and then you're allowed. But then what if you do not have money? What if you are not then on NSFAS? What then happens to you? Because then it goes hand in hand with also if you owe money and you need your qualification, your certificate, because a potential employer requires it, or you need your results. So either you can articulate or go look for employment or go to another institution or do whatever you need. You cannot do that, it's withheld. So that is directed to just a pool or a specific grouping within the general student population. So it's not a solution that addresses everyone. And those people that they are talking about, they do not have a problem. But they will have a problem, though, if that outstanding debt of theirs is not cleared by the time they graduate or the time they have to exit the system. Then that same outstanding debt will now come back to haunt them, like the students we're talking about now. Like graduate unemployment is increasing. We want students to articulate to get those honors, masters, and PhD, but they cannot do so. And that is what is feeding to this increasing quarterly increasing graduate unemployment. So that is not addressing everyone, it's just addressing that pool, and it's not even a progressive solution to them because it will bite them in the long run.
So I understand it's 18 of the 21 public universities that were involved in these negotiations that have now agreed essentially to the idea of a shutdown. Would it be an indefinite shutdown, or how do you see that working out in reality, essentially?
So it's 18 that are currently participating now. It's 21 that had agreed. But when we started off the shutdown, it was about 7 institutions. So they are coming on board. Probably by Friday, each and every institution would be on board and we'll have 26. We are saying that from the 15 demands that we have tabled, one has been addressed, which is to open up NSFAS for late application, because universities have under-enrolled and they've admitted to it. So now they need numbers, so NSFAS will also open up. And then that's what will happen. So now we are basically left with 14 demands. So we are saying that we do not want to go indefinitely. It's impossible, but we will go until those demands are met.
You mentioned both very quickly, the department and the universities, I beg your pardon. Looking at the two at this point, because you have dealings with both, who do you think is the more honest broker between the two?
So far, both of them are not, because as I've cited earlier when we began our conversation, is that the department would say this in our meetings and do something else later. We already know our millionaire vice-chancellors are people that cannot be trusted, because even their actions are not in line with where the country is going. That's why they are under-enrolling at their institutions, but they have not done so. How we found out that universities are under-enrolling is because of our SRCs that sit in councils. When they view those minutes of councils, which is the governance structures of the university, they find that the student population at those respective universities is actually decreasing instead of remaining the same or increasing, whereas matrics coming into the system or wishing to enter the system are increasing each and every year due to the improvement in quantity and quality of the matric pass rate. And those that could not access the institutions in previous years also want access. That's why we have the problem we have with UNISA, because these young people cannot find space in contact universities. Now they are running to UNISA.
Bongani Mahlangu from the South African Union of Students, I have no doubt that you'll be back in here for another conversation. But for now, thank you very much for being on Nightline.